The Galactic Dominion's warships descended upon Earth like silent titans, their obsidian hulls blotting out the sun. The invasion was not a battle, but an execution. Their technology rendered human defenses useless within hours. Fleets of autonomous drones dismantled Earth's satellites, severing global communication. The Dominion soldiers, towering humanoid figures clad in armor that pulsed with an eerie blue light, marched through the streets of every major city. Resistance was brief, futile. At first, humanity believed negotiations might spare them. They had read enough stories, seen enough films to imagine a scenario where superior invaders, impressed by human resilience, might grant mercy. But the Dominion did not conquer for politics or diplomacy. They sought efficiency. Their goal was simple: subjugate and extract resources. Earth's people were an afterthought. Those who did not comply were eradicated. Among the survivors, the whispers began. They don't know. Someone had muttered in a ruined bunker beneath Washington. They don't know who they woke up. The phrase spread like wildfire among the scattered remnants of humanity. The invaders took it as a joke. Every species they had conquered had its myths, gods, demons, warriors of legend. Humans, it seemed, were no different. They called him Baba Yaga, a name pulled from ancient folklore, whispered like a spell of protection against the inevitable. General Varkos of the Galactic Dominion stood within the command hub of his flagship, watching footage of Earth's final days of resistance. The visuals flickered across the holographic interface. Aerial strikes reducing city blocks to dust, armored infantry sweeping through the wreckage, capturing or incinerating survivors. He found the process monotonous, predictable. This is what they fear. Varkos mused, replaying a shaky, intercepted human transmission. The captured soldier on screen, bloodied but defiant, glared at the interrogator. "You think you've won," the man rasped, "but you don't understand. You've awoken the Baba Yaga." Varkos scoffed. Another dying soldier clinging to fairy tales. He had witnessed this before. The last desperate attempts of a species unwilling to accept its end. "What do we know of this Baba Yaga?" he asked, not expecting anything of interest. A subordinate, a sleek, silver-skinned tactician named Rilek, responded. "A human term. Originates from old Earth folklore, an entity of fear. It appears to be a mythological threat, nothing more." Varkos nodded, satisfied. Then let them cling to their myths. But then the disappearances began. A Dominion patrol squad was the first to vanish. A routine sweep through a ruined cityscape, 15 soldiers, each equipped with tracking implants and motion sensors. They stopped reporting 2 hours into their mission. When a recovery team arrived, they found only silence. The transport vehicle was intact. No signs of explosives, no trace of a firefight. The bodies, when they found them, were arranged in a perfect line along the street, throats slit with surgical precision. The Galactic Dominion had encountered resistance before. They had fought enemies capable of slaughtering entire squads, but never without a sound, never without evidence of struggle. Varkos observed the footage from the recovery team's body cams. He leaned closer, intrigued despite himself. The Dominion's warriors were not weak. They had crushed planetary militias, shattered empires. Yet here, on this backwater world, something had slipped through their defenses. The next strike was bolder. A Dominion stronghold in what had once been Moscow reported a breach. Internal security detected movement, something fast, too fast for their automated defenses. The entire facility went dark. When reinforcements arrived, they found the command center soaked in blood. The officers had been executed, their bodies stacked neatly in the center of the room. One phrase was carved into the steel walls in perfect galactic script. "Leave now." Varkos felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of unease. He crushed it instantly. Fear was for lesser beings. The Dominion responded with overwhelming force. They deployed their finest hunters, bio-enhanced enforcers designed for planetary pacification. These were soldiers with reflexes faster than the human eye could process, capable of tearing through reinforced steel with their bare hands. They had faced the worst the galaxy had to offer. And yet, within 2 days, half of them were dead. The survivors spoke of a ghost. He moves in the shadows, one soldier rasped, trembling as medics worked to seal his wounds. Not like an animal, not like a man. He waits. He watches. Varkos listened to these reports with growing frustration. A single human could not be responsible for this. Perhaps Earth had developed an unknown combat specialist, a rogue operative from their former militaries. It was an anomaly, nothing more. But still, something gnawed at him. The efficiency of the kills. The precision. Then the transmissions began. One by one, Dominion ships received encrypted messages on secured frequencies, impossible for primitive human technology to breach. Each message was brief, spoken in perfect, unaccented Dominion tongue. You shouldn't have come. You should have left me buried. Now I bury you. Each time, the voice was calm, measured. Varkos could no longer ignore the threat. He summoned his war council. I want this human dead, he said, voice cold. Deploy our highest-ranked execution squads. Track every heat signature, every movement anomaly. If they breathe, I want to know about it. Rilek hesitated. General, we have encountered warriors before. Assassins. Snipers. But this is... Varkos turned sharply. Are you suggesting we should be afraid? Rilek swallowed, his silver skin dimming slightly. No, General. Only that we should be cautious. Caution was for those who had the luxury of fear. Varkos had never feared an enemy in his long campaign across the stars. He would not start now. The orders were given. The most elite warriors in the Dominion's history were sent to hunt this lone human. They laughed as they prepared. This would be a game, a hunt, a final mockery of Earth's weakness. But 2 days later, only silence remained. The Dominion no longer laughed. What had begun as an amusement, an insignificant remnant of Earth's defiance, had become an infection spreading through the ranks. Soldiers whispered in hushed tones, their voices laced with something unfamiliar, dread. It was not just the losses, war always had losses. It was the way they died. Their best trackers, their most elite squads, vanished into the night like forgotten echoes. No distress calls, no scattered gunfire, just silence. And then the bodies, left behind as if arranged deliberately. Varkos stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of a battle they were losing against a single opponent. Red markers, indicating lost squads, now outnumbered the blue indicators of remaining forces. He stared at the images, the precise execution of his soldiers. Throats slit in perfect symmetry. Chests pierced at the exact point where their twin hearts beat beneath their exoskeletal plates. The efficiency was inhuman. Rilek stood beside him, posture rigid, his silver skin dimmed to a dull sheen. General, I have analyzed the patterns. This is not random. It is strategy. The target is dismantling us, piece by piece. Varkos did not respond immediately. His jaw tightened. You think I do not see that? Rilek hesitated, then pressed forward. We are no longer hunting. We are being hunted. Varkos exhaled slowly. He had conquered worlds, reduced civilizations to memory. Yet this was different. He had never fought something unseen, something that left no trail, something that used fear as a weapon. Enough. His fist came down hard against the control panel, silencing the room. The officers stiffened. Deploy the Omega Strikers, he ordered. A ripple of unease passed through the command center. The Omega Strikers were more than elite. They were the Dominion's executioners. Genetically engineered. Enhanced beyond the limits of their species, they were designed to eliminate entire resistance cells alone. They felt no fear. They knew no pain. Rilek inclined his head. A wise choice. But even as the order left Varkos's lips, something within him whispered that it would not be enough. The Omega Strikers deployed at dusk, descending into the ruined city where the last patrol had fallen. Their armor gleamed beneath the shattered remnants of Earth's skyline, weapons humming with restrained energy. They moved in perfect synchronization, scanning for heat signatures, motion variances, anything that would betray their target's location. They found nothing. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The air grew thick with the weight of something unseen. Then, a shadow moved. The first Omega striker turned, only for his throat to erupt in a fine mist of blood before he could register what had happened. The second twisted, firing wildly, but there was nothing to shoot, only darkness swallowing his squad, one by one. The last survivor activated his emergency beacon, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts. Contact. We have. A whisper cut through the transmission. Too slow. The feed went dark. Varkos clenched his fists as the war room fell silent. No one spoke. There was no point. They all knew what this meant. The Omega Strikers had never failed. Until now. The general turned slowly. His officers flinched under the weight of his gaze. Lock the city down. I want every drone, every sensor, every available unit focused on one thing, flushing this creature out. Rilek hesitated. And if that fails? Varkos's expression was unreadable. Then I go in myself. The city became a cage, and Baba Yaga was the prey. Every street, every ruined building, was flooded with Dominion forces. Hovercrafts patrolled from above, scanning for the slightest anomaly. Troopers moved in squads of 10, weapons raised, fingers trembling over the triggers. And still he killed them. They found the first bodies at dawn, lined up against a wall, their own weapons clutched against their chests. No blood, no signs of struggle, just the silent mark of death. Panic spread like a virus. The Dominion were warriors, but they were not immune to fear. They saw him in every shadow, heard him in the stillness. Some swore they felt his presence, watching, waiting. Soldiers who had never hesitated in battle now flinched at the slightest sound. Deserters were executed. Orders were barked. But it did not matter. They had already lost something vital, the belief that they were untouchable. Then the messages came again. You should have left. You were warned. Varkos could feel the tension tightening around his command like a noose. He had underestimated this enemy. No, not enemy, executioner. There was no army, no rebellion, just one man. The general stood at the edge of the city, watching the ruins where his soldiers had fallen. A dry wind stirred the dust, carrying with it the scent of blood and decay. He had led campaigns across the stars, burned civilizations to ash. Yet now he was forced to acknowledge a truth he had never encountered before. He was losing. But Varkos was no coward. If this warrior wanted war, then so be it. He would face him himself. The city lay in ruins, bathed in the cold glow of Dominion patrol lights. What had once been a hunt had become a war of attrition, but now there was no army left to fight it. Only one man, one myth, and one warlord who refused to bow. Varkos stood at the heart of the abandoned streets, the remains of his elite forces scattered behind him. Their bodies lay where they had fallen, untouched by scavengers, as if the very air around them warned against disturbance. He had watched his soldiers, his enforcers, his finest warriors die, without so much as a whisper of resistance. The kill count was now beyond reason, beyond strategy. The thing they had called Baba Yaga had done this alone. Varkos clenched his hands, his breath slow and controlled, his twin hearts beating in unison. He had ruled over the ruins of conquered civilizations. He had seen planets burn, watched the light in the eyes of dying emperors fade as they realized their legacies meant nothing. He did not fear death, but he recognized inevitability when it stalked him. The air was too still. The silence pressed against him like a tangible weight. His enhanced vision scanned every shadow, searching, waiting. The warrior had taken his time. Varkos knew this was no longer about survival. This was a reckoning, then movement, a flicker at the edge of perception. Varkos turned swiftly, plasma rifle raised, but there was nothing, just empty space where something had been, where something had watched. A whisper, low, calm, unhurried. You shouldn't have come. Varkos fired. The plasma bolt struck only darkness. A blur moved behind him, and he twisted, swinging his blade in a sharp arc, metal met air. Too slow. Pain. A sharp line of fire across his side, so fast his nerves barely registered it before the blood dripped onto the rubble-strewn ground. Varkos gritted his teeth, stepping back, eyes scanning wildly. Nothing. You think you frightened me? His voice was steady, but the weight in his chest told a different story. A chuckle, low and humorless. Not yet. A shadow peeled from a wreckage, a figure moving with the silence of death itself. He wore no armor, no insignia of rank, just dark combat gear worn from war and time. His face was marked with old scars, his eyes the color of something long burned away. He was human, and yet not. Varkos had fought warriors, assassins, rebels. He had never seen something like this. Not a soldier, not a survivor, a force of nature wrapped in flesh. Your people, Varkos said, keeping his voice even, they call you Baba Yaga. The man tilted his head slightly. Your people should have listened. Varkos lunged, his blade striking in a blur of motion, but the man was already gone, slipping beneath the strike like water. A fist connected with his ribs, and something cracked. He staggered, but did not fall. Faster than any human should be. Stronger. More precise. A weapon honed beyond reason. Varkos exhaled, forcing his body to override the pain. He had not risen to power through brute force alone. He had survived war after war, adapted, endured. He would not fall like the rest. He adjusted his stance, slowing his breath, calculating, watching. The man smirked. Good. I was starting to think you weren't worth the trouble. Varkos attacked again, and this time his blade met flesh. A shallow cut along the human's forearm, barely enough to slow him. But it was enough. You bleed, Varkos said, satisfaction curling through his voice. The man glanced at the wound as if it were an afterthought. So do you. Varkos had no time to react before the world tilted. A strike to his knee sent him down, another to his wrist disarmed him, his blade clattering against the broken pavement. His own body betrayed him, collapsing onto its side as pain flared along his nerves. He looked up to see the human standing over him, calm, unhurried. The fight had never been fair. Varkos had known at the moment he stepped into the ruins alone. The man crouched beside him, resting his arms on his knees, considering him like a puzzle with only one missing piece. You thought Earth was yours, the man said. Not a question. A fact. Varkos breathed through the pain. It still will be. The man studied him for a long moment, then sighed, almost disappointed. No, it won't. Varkos stared up at him, feeling something foreign settle in his chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something worse. Understanding. You woke me up, the man said, standing. And now I put you to sleep. The last thing Varkos saw was the shadow moving, impossibly fast, before the world went dark.